Chapter 4 The Power of Mentoring. Dadamoni in Bengali literally means the gem among brothers. I came under Dadamoni's tutelage when mother and I moved to Vani Vihar. The age gap of 14 years between us made him part eldest brother and part father. While waiting to be admitted to the university's primary school on campus, I had nothing to do. I would at times sneak out of the house and wander around the university's corridors and classrooms. I found these to be fascinating places. The sight of young men and women walking around with fat books in their hands and hope in their eyes. The wise professors who often walked in twos and seemed so knowledgeable and happy and engaged in conversation. The beautiful library building, everything just pulled me in. Sometimes I would even stand outside classrooms eavesdropping on postgraduate lectures. On one such occasion, I was peeping into a classroom where Dadamoni was teaching and he spotted me. I ran away. When he came home that evening, instead of punishing me, he asked me what I had been doing there. I sheepishly told him that I had been listening to him. What was I teaching? He asked. You were telling them something about demand and supply. I replied. What about it? You were saying that with only one buyer and one seller, it is very difficult to fix the price of anything. He was impressed. He started explaining the theory of demand and supply to me in great detail, how a marketplace worked, how prices were fixed, and the correlation of price with demand and supply. He took my curiosity seriously enough to periodically tell me about money and banking and finance. He taught me the law of marginal utility. Suppose you like to eat oranges and keep eating one after the other. The first one will make you happy. The second one probably even happier still. You will probably enjoy the third, but then a time will come when you will no longer be able to get that same satisfaction from every additional orange you eat. And if I keep insisting that you have more, it will probably make you feel sick. This is diminishing utility. I nodded. It made perfect sense because I had felt sick after eating too many sweets just a few days earlier. In the days and months that followed, he told me about economists like Alfred Marshall and Adam Smith. With each lesson, I found myself elevated to a different level. The annual University Chancellor's Cup debate competition was due. The best debaters from various colleges had come together to compete. Dadamoni asked me to come along to hear the competitors on the condition that I sit quietly at the back. I was mesmerized by the young men and women who came up to the podium to passionately debate the motion. I did not understand most of what they said, but the process was spellbinding. I told myself that someday I had to engage in this kind of thing. On joining the IAS, Dadamoni was posted at Kionjar, where he was trained in various aspects of district administration, from overseeing land settlement in villages to declaring Section 144 in disturbed areas during a student strike. He always treated me like an adult, talking to me about the Indian Penal Code IPC and the Criminal Procedure Code CRPC. The concept of segregation of power between the executive, the legislature, and the judiciary. The working of grassroots organizations like the panchayat system, the intricacies of the revenue administration, and issues of development. It was as if I was his understudy. Kyonjar has one of the world's richest deposits of iron ore, and during the days of the Cold War, India used a lot of mining equipment from East European countries. The ore was exported to various countries. When the Hungarian ambassador came on a visit to Dayatri, an iron ore mine, Dadamuni had to play host since Dayatri was in his subdivision. He took me along to meet the ambassador on the way from Kyonjar to Dayatri. As I sat next to him in his official jeep, he explained the concept of official protocol, how an ambassador actually represented the sovereign, and coached me to address the ambassador as Your Excellency. I could not wait for the visitor to ask me a question to show off that I knew how to address him correctly. Even though I was a small boy, I still remember the poor man's bewildered expression when I replied to his innocuous question, "What is your name?" with "Your Excellency, my name is Subroto Bagchi." In addition to the intricacies of district administration and diplomatic protocol, Dadamuni also taught me Rabindranath Tagore's timeless verse, "Where the mind is without fear." It came in handy because I shifted schools every other year. The fact that I could recite an English poem by Tagore earned me instant acceptance in the eyes of my new teachers and my peers, who spoke little English themselves. Shanti Swarup was my second eldest brother. We lost him prematurely a few years before we lost mother. At home, he was called Winston because my father loved Churchill. As soon as Winston completed his high school with flying colors, he was sent away to join the Air Force because my father could not afford the burden of simultaneously paying for the education of two sons in college and the resultant expenses for hostel accommodation. Places like Raigarh, Nabarangpur and Koraput in those days had no local colleges. That was a pity because Winston was the most brilliant among the five of us. He joined the Air Force as an airman. He came home on his annual holidays, and it was a time for good food and a lot of joy because he brought small gifts for everyone. Among them, it was his duty to bring seeds of cosmos, petunia, zinnia, and marigold for mother's garden every year. Since he was in the armed forces, I always thought he killed enemy soldiers. I didn't know who the enemy was, and whenever I would bug him to tell me how many enemy soldiers he had killed, he would make up a new number each time. They varied widely beyond belief, but I was happy that he was at least killing some, rather than engage me with war anecdotes. He would insist on teaching me how to polish shoes such that you could see your face in them. Even today, long after we have all grown up and Winston is no more, I still take pride in my ability to make a shoe shine. We saw him only once a year ever since I can remember, but every vacation he taught me something new. I remember how elated the family was when he finally got the rank of a junior commissioned officer, up from a sergeant. It meant a visible shift in status and attendant perks. Now he could travel not by second class but by first class while coming home by train for his annual vacation. As he got down at the railway station after his maiden first class ride, he patted me on the head and said, "If you want a guy to do a first class job, give me a first class ticket." I nodded his boyish wonder, but every time I look at organizations and their obsession with making life better for the folks at the top at the expense of the smaller folk who actually matter, I remember those words and the pride the entire family felt when one Winston got a first-class ticket. I am sure he also did a first-class job. Though I have some fond memories of his visits, they are always accompanied by a sense of goodbye. As a result, he was always the visitor and lacked the relative permanence in my consciousness of either Dada Muni or Amitabh. My third brother Amitabh, a good 11 years older to me, studied at a college in a town near home. Because of his proximity, he visited home more often than Shanti Sharu. Amitabh's nickname at home is Bulbul, but a 3-year-old me could somehow only pronounce it as Buldul, and I continued to call him that even as I grew up. Dada Muni and Amitabh grew up to be very different people, but both became role models for me in different ways. While Dada Muni excelled by treading the middle ground, Amitabh lived on the edge, walking to a different drummer, a born rebel. He always questioned the system every step of the way and lived life on his own terms. Amitabh failed class 5th because he did not like his teacher. He once ran away from home as a little boy. In college, he was thrown out for his anti-establishment activities and student activism. My father, a man of very little means, a man who hated politics and politicians, threatened to cut off financial support to him unless he quit politics. Amitabh would not give into that condition. To him, freedom to decide his own course was more important. He told my father that he would rather fend for himself. He was president of his college union, and during his tenure he brought the entire state to a halt with a prolonged agitation, was shot at point blank range by law enforcement official, escaped by a miracle, and through all this remained unaffected by my father's rejections. The two agreed to disagree. His active involvement in politics took a rare seat when he had to choose a career and take up part of the family's financial burden. He joined the legal profession at the bar and, following a period of initial struggle, eventually started doing quite well. But then he wanted to get back to active politics. That did not quite work out for him. He took to alcohol that sent him to the brink, and suddenly one day he just quit alcohol, politics, his practice at the bar, his wife and 2 young sons, and went away in search of God, wandering for a good 12 years as a man of religion before partially returning to his family after his second son died in a tragic accident. There is something fascinating about Amitabh. He could have an engaging conversation on the future of humanity, world affairs, history, and religion on any other topic. But more important was his ability to be one with ordinary people, his inclusive nature, to love and be loved. He lived for others before he lived for himself. As a student in the hostel, my mother would give him a blanket or a sweater every winter, and the next time he came home, rest assured, he would not have it, having given it away to some poor person. Rickshaw pullers, petty shopkeepers, students, teachers, bureaucrats, policemen, and politicians would do anything for him. When he spoke at public meetings, he could electrify his audience. The poorest of the poor went to him with their problems. He was there for them through drought, flood, or any other natural disaster. Whenever he went, people gave him food, shelter, and anything else he needed. He had ample opportunity to become materially very successful in life, but every time something would make him opt out of the race for position and power. When he quit his law practice to become a hermit, everyone was worried what would happen to his family. He wondered What would have happened to them if he had been run over by a truck? Some were angry at what they saw as his irresponsibility towards his wife and children. Some called him an escapist. Some were simply dumbfounded by his decision, and some thought he was a great soul in search of life's true meaning. None of these opinions mattered to him. He simply went away. India doesn't let its hermits go hungry. For 12 long years, Amitabh roamed from place to place. Sometimes he was seen in Puri, sometimes high up in the mountains in Kapilas, and sometimes with a Vaishnavite sect. He survived. Amitabh returned to perform the last rites for his second son, who was reviving from a bad accident and a bout of jaundice. At the same time, lost his balance, fell down, and died in the prime of his youth. During his activist day, Amitabh routinely used to take care of the last rites for any unclaimed dead body, and now he had to do so for his son. We reached the burning ghat around midnight. There were half a dozen dead bodies in different stages of cremation. The mourners all gone. Cold rain was coming down. The wind played havoc with the fire. The body on the pyre would not burn. The smell of flesh and water and fire made standing there an ordeal. The men who make a living cremating the dead moved from one corpse to another, bamboo stick in hand, to turn the corpses. Having worked the whole day, they were too tired to fight the elements and started leaving. Amitabh did not leave. He stood by the pyre of his son, coaxing the boy that had once played in his lap as a baby to be one with the reluctant flames, turning it, pushing it, adjusting it with the bamboo stick gently, as if beseeching it to return to where it had come from. His face remained stoic behind the long matted hair and flowing beard. He did not cry. As my mentor Dada Muni had a Pygmalion effect in shaping my personality and my destiny. Learning gives us knowledge, but it is good mentoring that gives us the ability to relate it to the real world. It helps us learn life skills and molds our attitude. The self-confidence that mentoring can generate is huge. The principles of mentoring a child and a budding professional are not different. It all begins with the magical sensation of someone reaching out and whispering into your ears, "Yes, you can." This is when dreams are created and bridges built to reach beyond the realm of the possible. I learned the importance of ambition and achievement from Dada Muni. From Amitabh, I learned that our achievements are only as good as the value they create for others. He also taught me that in the larger context of life and living, the line between what is mine and what isn't is just another porous continuum. In it, the gaps, the empty spaces that make the line porous are the reality. These intermittently laid lines are just our perception. They are drawn by a mind that is not fully awake to the deeply interconnected nature of the things. All professional growth must finally take us to that point of realization, because quantum achievement follows a state of awareness in which the concept of mine and thine ceases to exist. I count my blessings for the early life influences of my family on me. In many ways, we are all surrounded by such people all the time. Sometimes they are siblings, sometimes friends, teachers and co-workers. As we get on with the concrete business of life, we lose our capacity to receive from people. The capacity to receive asks for humility. Humility makes the mind an empty vessel that then can receive. The capacity to receive expands. When there is the willingness to give back, only when we return what we receive are we blessed to receive even more.